Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and today I'm going to go through my tier lists that I made before World started, and the rankings for every individual team. I'll talk about how I think it went during the group stages, so that we have a starting point for how we should be thinking about the next round. Not sure why it resets like that. That's pretty annoying. Well, all these guys were on the bottom tier, so we'll just go back to this. So this was before the play-in started as well. I think first we should go through the teams. So when I ranked the teams before everything started, I had them in separate tiers. In my bottom tier, I had Mad Lions, Rogue, TSM, FlyQuest, and Team Liquid. None of those teams advanced to the next round, so that was basically correct. In my next tier, I had LGD and Fnatic, which was basically my way of saying one of these teams will make it through because of how the groups were set up. Or at that point, it was because the groups should work out where Fnatic, LGD, and Gen G were all in the same group. So one of them did advance. Then I had G2, Sunning, Gen G, and DRX. They all advanced. Dom1 Gaming, JDG, and Top Esports. They all advanced. So if we go from top to bottom, it's Top Esports, JDG, Dom1 Gaming, DRX, Gen G, Sunning, G2, LGD Fnatic, Mad Lions, Rogue, TSM, FlyQuest, Team Liquid. So the reason I thought about doing this video is because somebody in my Discord was saying it was probably Dingo, was saying, oh, who had FlyQuest rated higher than Rogue or something. So I don't know if he had that, but it just made me think about my rankings. And here we are. So let's get the Leaguepedia. All right, so let's just go team by team. So we'll do Mad Lions because Mad Lions was eliminated during the play-in stage. They went 1-3. Shadow didn't look good, which was a surprise to everybody. LGD made it through. Started off 1-3, but then ended up doing pretty well for the rest of play-in stage, which is what you would expect from a top team in that like subgroup of teams. Team Liquid went 3-1, and then they did an okay job in the main event relative to what their expectations should have been. So since I had these teams rated this way, it's like, well, obviously it's unlikely they make it out of groups. So to go 3-3 is very good, and I think that Team Liquid had chances to beat G2. They could have beaten G2 2 games in a row. Maybe not in that specific game the way that it played out, but they had their chances. Like if Sunning, this is what it is. If Sunning beat G2 both games, then G2 would have had to play Team Liquid for the second spot, I think. That would have been really cool. And that's how it should have been, because Sunning should have won their first game against G2, in my opinion. All right, so let's go back to the list. Team Liquid, FlyQuest. So today, FlyQuest finished up 3-3. They beat Unicorns of Love twice. They beat Top Esports today, which, I mean, great win for FlyQuest. Very, very nice win for FlyQuest. And it just goes to show you that because of the way that the draft works out, the early game works out, there are always opportunities for the lesser team to beat a better team in a single game. It's always definitely possible. So when we talk about live dogs versus not live dogs, it's really just like the best live dogs where they have a big amount of leverage between their implied win rate and their actual win rate. Unicorns of Love, I mean, I was skeptical of them the entire time. I said I'd bet against them the entire tournament because Unicorns of Love was dominant domestically, but being dominant in whatever league they're from, it really does not matter. They went 39-2 in their domestic league, and they went 0-6 at Worlds. Obviously, they played in a tough group. Nobody should expect them to beat Top Esports or DRX, but the fact that they got 0-2'd by FlyQuest is a bad result for them. I'm not saying they couldn't take a game from FlyQuest. I'm just saying it didn't work out that way, so people will have a negative opinion of their performance at the World Championship, which stinks. Next up, TSM. So TSM was a big disappointment to a lot of people. But again, who did you expect TSM to beat consistently in this group? TSM against Fnatic. Maybe you can say they should have went 1-1. Fine. TSM against Gen G. I'll take Gen G 2-0 every time. LGD against TSM. I'll take 2-0. But even if you go 1-1, that means they're going 2-4 in the group stage. That's never going to get you out of group stage. So again, it's about managing expectations, having realistic expectations for the players, for the team. It's difficult to work yourself up and be upset when the most likely outcome is the one that happens. Then we had Rogue. Rogue, I think that Rogue did a pretty good job relative to expectations because they were in a very difficult group. They gave the top teams difficult games. So I did like how they performed, even though they're 1-5. If you're just looking at the record, obviously it's not a good record. But I think for their first time at the World Championships with this group of players, I think that they did a commendable job. And so that it did increase my opinion of Rogue overall. Then next up we had Fnatic. So Fnatic did a really great job in this portion of the tournament. They went 1-1 against Gen G. That was a pretty big surprise to me. Selfmade has played very well, but he's also been given Graves in a bunch of games, which no jungler should be given Graves as many times as Selfmade has gotten Graves. It's just it does two things. It shows that the other teams aren't afraid of it, and it shows that he can play it serviceably, which is good enough to win games when your team drafts better or has a better early game. But if we get into a spot where it's a 50-50, like a true 50-50, or if they're in a losing position out of the draft or the early game, is he going to be able to turn around the game? And I'm still not sure about that. We'll see who they draw in the next round, but that'll determine how far they go in this. But like I said, Fnatic, G2, these kinds of teams do compete pretty well at the World Championships because they're willing to fight. They're not afraid of anybody. So they will get into these like aggressive positions as opposed to being defensive and passive, which a lot of the teams from North America tend to do. Then we had LGD. So LGD was a huge disappointment in my mind because, well, it's tough. So I think that they definitely could have taken a game off of Gen G. The fact that they dropped the game to Fnatic was always in the realm of possibilities, but I was just on the opposite side of it. And then, Peanut looked lost in a lot of these mid-games, dragon fights, where he just takes half of his health bar for no reason and then is not able to contest the dragon the correct way. So you'll have Peanut running around on Lilia with 50% health. Like, that champion is worthless at that point because it's going to require more effort and probably even more of his health bar in order to get into an advantageous position for a Q or for his ultimate. So just really, really bad performance overall. And I think it's difficult to blame Peanut for this because his team is set up in such a way that he needs to carry, and that's a lot to ask of a player. Like if you think about Fnatic compared to LGD, Fnatic has Whippo, who has these games where he goes insane. Nemesis doesn't really. Nemesis is generally the one that depends on his teammates to get him into a good position, but then can capitalize once he is, which he showed in his Orianna games. But then Reckless, like they're always playing around Reckless. So if the focal point is Reckless and you have a jungler like Selfmade who's continuously getting Graves, then you're going to be in a good spot to perform well as that jungler. For LGD, Peanut is the focal point. Peanut is the one playing the carry jungler. So Kramer isn't taking enough pressure off of him. Longshi is not taking enough pressure off of him. Xie is kind of the player that can carry these late game team fights, but in this meta, the mid laner is much more important as a tool of the jungler. So you'd really like for there to be some other kind of threat on the team, either from the top lane or from the AD carry. Or to have a really great roaming support, which, I mean, Mark did pretty well, and I think that LGD, comparing LGD from spring to summer, They made tremendous improvements because of Xie, because of Longxi and Mark, but I think that they're never going to be a great team unless they get rid of Kramer for a true carry, 80 carry that teams need to be afraid of. G2 went 4-2. This is kind of how I expected it to go. I think Suning is obviously a better team than G2 at this point. Just watching those games, I'm not sure how you could have much of a different opinion than that. I like what I saw from Suning. I think that it's what I expected, and that was the one team that I was really afraid that I was way too high on, because like I saw it before the summer split even started. I was saying that Suning was a dark horse to win the summer split if it started turning into an 80 carry meta, and we haven't even really seen that. Like the meta has not gone that far into the 80 carry direction, which is even more impressive for Suning, because it means that they're playing in this jungle meta and still performing well. So let's say next year we get into an 80 carry meta, they can be a very good team, like a very, very, very good team. I don't expect Suning to win the World Championship this year. I think that'd be incredible. I think that they could definitely make it to the semifinals. Like depending on who they get matched up with, I could see them even getting to the finals. I just don't expect them to win the finals, because it's gonna be quarters, semis, finals. So like if let's say they get a good matchup and they get like Fnatic, I think that they would beat Fnatic consistently. So they need to dodge DRX and JDG. So a 33% chance against JDG and DRX. I think Suning could beat DRX, and they haven't beaten JDG, but I think they could. So that'll be exciting to see how the next round gets drawn. All right, who's next? Suning, Genji. I think Genji played really well. This is what everybody expected of them. They had one bad game against Fnatic where they just got stomped in the early game, which is fine. It happens to everybody. DRX, they lost 2 games to Top Esports, but they kept everything relatively close. I think Piosik has done really well so far. I think that is a good sign for things to come for DRX, especially in future seasons. Damwon Gaming, 5-1. Looking very good. JDG 4-2. They've kind of been a little scary. I'm not in love with how they've played so far. Outside of their win over Damwon, I expect them to continue. I expect them to improve in the next stage, which should scare everyone. And then last up, we have Top Esports. Top Esports dropped a game against FlyQuest. They already qualified at that point, so I understand how maybe it wasn't that important to them. Not much to say, really. I just think that was the expected outcome. So let's go through these tier lists. So all of these players doesn't really matter. So let's just go back through the rationale for this as well. So D is basically players that I don't think are even carries for their own team, and I don't expect them to be a consistent contributor to the winning difference for their team. Then we have Whippo and Broken Blade. I think Whippo probably played just as well. I think Whippo, if I was doing this again, I'd probably say Whippo's probably here. I think Bin played better than him. Rascal and Doran, I think, haven't really impressed. They haven't really impressed anybody. I would say it's more like this. I think that Bin has been one of the best performing top laners at Worlds. Zoom really hasn't been. 369 really hasn't been. If it was relative to expectations, I think Bin is probably the best performing top laner at Worlds right now. But yeah, I do like Whippo. I like Whippo's play style. I think that he always has interesting picks, which is a team thing, but it's also a player thing. Okay, so then for junglers, the bottom tier we had Santorin, Spica, Broxa, and Yonkos. I think that this is certainly true at this point. I think that Yonkos has not played well so far, which is probably a good sign for G2. Maybe they don't need him to be a high-quality carry jungler to perform well at Worlds, but If I'm rating just the junglers, I can't have him much higher than this. So we have Piosik, Karsa. Shadow had a huge had an underwhelming performance at the World Championships this year. Very, very disappointing. I think Selfmade, relative to expectations, Selfmade's probably in the A tier. And then Inspired didn't really do that well, but when his team was winning games or like competitive in games, he did have a big part of it because he's the jungler. S of M, Clid, Peanut. I mean, Peanut played horribly. I mean, Peanut has to drop down a tier. Canyon has played well. And then Kanavi. I don't think Kanavi has really separated himself as the best player at Worlds in the jungle so far. Then we have, for the mid lane, Nemesis. Jensen played pretty well relative to expectations. I think that Power of Evil did a good job relative to expectations, picking up a win against Top Esports. He had some good games. I don't think Angel's played very well. I don't think Shie's played very well. Everything else has kind of been what we expected. Like, Caps has looked good, but not great. I think that people will probably say that Chovy hasn't looked great, but that's because they had weird expectations for him. Like, his style of play is not a flashy, high kill score kind of player, but his style of play is still... It's even more difficult to perform at that level with his play style and champion pool. 80 carries. Wild Turtle. Wild Turtle played better than Double Lift, I'll tell you that much. I think Wild Turtle played better than Double Lift. I think Wild Turtle played better than Kramer. I think Wild Turtle played just as well as This Is Bruce, I think. Carzy, I don't think that the disappointment of Mad Lions was really on his shoulders. I think that Tactical did an okay job. I think that Perks has done an okay job, but nothing impressive. I think that Reckless has done fine, which is expected of him at this point. Hansama played well in the games that they were competitive. He was a big part of the reason why some of these games were even contested at any point. Ghost, I'm not a big fan of Ghost. I don't think he's played very well at this point relative to expectations as somebody who's on one of these top teams. Then we have Loken and Deft. Pretty much the same thing. Then we have Jackie Love, Huan Feng, and Ruler. I think that's about right. And then for supports, I think Keria has been the best support so far at the World Championship. I don't think Lumao has had a great championship so far. Sword Art has looked pretty good. But it's support, and it's tough to make big distinctions between them. But that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.